Hello, hello. Now we're going to go in and try and connect this into Facebook. Let's see. Wish me luck. If you are coming in here live right now, I am just tapping in here to see if we can go live in our page. And as we do that, okay, I am on. Amazing. Just give me a moment here. I just want to make sure that I can also, I do have some team that is supporting me today because obviously I can't be trying to manage chats in two different areas on Zoom and on Facebook. So I have Amanda from my team who is on here with me today. Today is day 1 of 4. So thank you to those of you who are joining me. And I'm just going to hop back in here for a moment and come into the chat. For those of you who are in the land of Facebook right now, and Amanda, maybe if you can tell me on my end, I see myself frozen in there, but am I moving? Do I look like a human? I'm fine. Okay, beautiful. All right, so I'm not going to give that any attention over there anymore. All right, so I want to say welcome and I want to say thank you for joining me for this. This is something that I don't often go live inside of Facebook. We have been receiving a lot of different questions and concerns from many women for a little while now, but I would say that in the last month, it has definitely, it has increased to the point where I can't ignore anymore how, not that I was ever ignoring, but just the volume of messages and struggles coming in from women who are suffering from PCOS or who think that they are suffering and they're not quite sure, or maybe it's your daughter, but in whatever which way it is, this is something that has definitely come to the forefront for you. And so in connecting with my team and talking about what we could do, oftentimes I will teach one masterclass. PCOS is a big topic. And I've decided to break it up over 4 days. So we're going to spend about 40 minutes together each day live. Some of you may be watching the recording of this as well. Just a little housekeeping. We're using technology. So obviously, if anything happens, as you were, I have a dog here you can't see in the background. At some point, she'll probably bark and someone will come to the door. We just flow with it. And I'm still nursing a sore throat. So I may be taking extra water breaks and those types of things. The other thing I just wanted to say is that this isn't a 40-minute AMA, just like throw all your questions out there for me to answer. I really want to try to teach you and break things down in a different way and maybe open up your eyes to different tests you didn't know were available, different things to think about asking your primary care practitioner. I'm going to be talking to you about nutrition and lifestyle and movement and supplements and all of that. So I'm going to give you a little lowdown of what to expect over the next 4 days together. So day 1 today, I'm going to be talking to you about what PCOS is and really the outdated, very common way of treating it and why a lot of women get a little bit better, but still end up having issues moving forward. I'm going to talk to you tomorrow about the 4 different types of PCOS because there is not just one type. On day 3, I'm going to be talking to you about your nutrition. I'm going to be talking to you about movement, and I'm going to be giving you tips on how to support in both of those areas. And then on day 4, I'm going to be talking about different supplements and different levels of support for PCOS. And throughout the whole thread of this as well, too, connecting you back to your gut, because as we continue to learn more about PCOS, which is the #1 endocrine disrupting issue, diagnosis, disorder that women are dealing with around the world of all different ages, is that the more research that is being done, it is being connected very much back to the health of your gut. And I have never worked with a woman in 20 plus years of clinical practice who is suffering from PCOS, who does not have some level of gut issue, who wasn't told she had IBS at some point, suffers from gas, from bloating, from constipation, from different digestive issues. And so there is a lot of discussion around PCOS being very much connected as an autoimmune condition in the body, showing up reproductively for women. So for those of you who maybe have been doing a lot of your own research, which I highly encourage that you do. You may have started to read some of this. Maybe this is brand spanking new information to you. I hope that you'll join me with a journal and a pen in hand over the next couple of days so that you can create some space, you can take some notes, that you can ask the questions when we get to that point to be able to do that. And then we'll see where this goes after these 4 days. Maybe that is when I will host a separate one that is just an AMA for that. Okay. So as I had said, this is the most common endocrine disruptor. And I am very curious to know, for those of you who are here live right now, which I can see the comments in the Zoom room, how many of you yourself have been told that you have PCOS or suspect that that is what is going on? If you could just actually share in the chat by saying yes, me, sharing whatever it is, that would be great. Okay, thank you. My daughter and I. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, like I said, it is something that it is very, very common. And my oldest is 15. And when she started her menstrual cycle, I mean, obviously for me as a mom doing what I do for a living, I was like, right away, let's start to track. I want you to, download this app, start to track your cycle, start to pay attention. And this is one of the most powerful ways that we as women and as moms can support our girls to understand the story that their endocrine system is trying to communicate with them. And with my daughter, I was noticing certain things where she was getting a period pretty regularly every month, but I was starting to question whether or not she was actually ovulating. And we ran a Dutch test on her. And in fact, in the cycle that we caught it, she had not ovulated. And this is what's referred to as an anovulatory cycle. And so my daughter is tall and thin. My daughter does not look like she would have any of the PCOS characteristics. Have we gone and diagnosed her with it? No, her body has made a big turnaround for the better. But I will tell you that catching some of those things, see, we've been taught very incorrectly around PCOS that it's just about having irregular periods. And that, in fact, is not true. You can have regular periods that come every 23 to 32 days, or maybe you have like a 27-day cycle, then it's 30, and then a 29-day, and then a 27. And it kind of does this thing by a couple of days, but it doesn't mean you're ovulating. And it's irregular ovulation. It's anovulatory cycles that can cause a lot of the problems for us as women and put us into a more androgenic, higher androgen state. And it's one of these questions of what comes first, like the chicken or the egg, right? No pun intended here, as we're talking about, we are not the chicken, but as we're talking about the eggs and the ovaries. And so, so much can happen. And stress is a huge factor in what can be the precipice of these changes happening in a woman's body. And there's definitely been a lot more stress that's been happening for a lot of individuals. And I think it is one of the reasons is why we are continuing to see such a rise. So we're going to go through some of this together. And my hope by the end of today's class is that you can come away understanding what this means when we're talking about things like higher androgens, and that getting tested purely through blood work may not be enough, and that it is a combination of knowing your test results and knowing and understanding what's going on in your body is going to be your best first move towards creating better balance in your system hormonally overall. Okay, so that's really where I want to go today. And I'll talk about the Dutch test, which is what we used with my daughter. I'll show you actually a screenshot of what was happening in her system at that time that got me going, okay. And it's interesting, I'm 42 now, and I look back to like even in high school where I was talking about all this stuff with my girlfriends, and so many of my friends at the time that were told they had PCOS, they were put on the pill for different reasons, not one of which being birth control, or they had acne, irregular cycles, a period that wouldn't start, all of these different things. And they all had the gut issues, and they all had the skin issues, and all had these different things. And I look back and I'm like, the writing was on the wall right there. And then watching these girlfriends of mine go through life and coming to the point where they came off the pill or they wanted to become mothers themselves, and watching them struggle with their weight, watching them struggle with their skin, with their hair, with so many different issues. And so I hope that coming out of this, that this helps you. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, I am the be all and end all when it comes to PCOS. What I am is I'm a functional health practitioner that specializes in women's health and hormones. And so there is a lot that I understand and know about many different things in the body. And the goal coming out of here today is not for you to be a PCOS expert. It's to feel more empowered and more informed as a woman and know where to look for the support that you need if you've been struggling. So most women are diagnosed typically in their teens, by their 20s, and most definitely by their 30s. Although I will say that I have worked with women that when they're going into the perimenopausal transition, that is a new diagnosis that, their doctor comes out with for them, is that they have PCOS. And that's a whole nother beast. But usually for women to be diagnosed, they have to have two of the three things happening at the same time to be going on. So evidence of elevated androgens, meaning in their blood work, typically there'll be elevated DHEA, there'll be elevated testosterone. And oftentimes at that, you'll see low sex hormone binding globulin, and that would be done in blood work. When you're working with a functional practitioner or a functional medicine practitioner or a naturopath, you will see those things in blood work, but then they will hopefully also run a Dutch test, which is a dried urinary test for comprehensive hormones. And that will probably show things like similar levels of elevated DHEAS, the sulfated form, testosterone, but something you get to see in the Dutch that you don't see in blood is how your body is metabolizing these androgens, and are they moving them down to something called a 5-alpha pathway. And this 5-alpha pathway, which I'll show you in a little bit when I share this page of a test that I want to show you, when that is high in women, when women's bodies choose to move more of these androgenic hormones down this pathway, it converts into something called DHT, which is 3 times more potent than the regular testosterone that your ovaries and your body would be producing. And this can contribute to the excess, which can contribute to the oily skin, the oily hair, the acne, the hair loss on your head, but the hair growth in other areas of your body. When you are somebody who moves things down more this androgenic pathway, you also want to do your due diligence and look and see what is going on with thyroid, how stable is your insulin and your blood sugar. And oftentimes when you see these higher levels of testosterone or this 5-alpha pathway, you're also going to see sometimes lower levels of estradiol, right? So all of the estrogen that we are creating in our body from our ovaries is originally coming from testosterone that has to be converted. And I'll go a little deeper in this into a little bit. But it's so important that we're not just hanging our hat on one test. We've got to look at the full picture. So that's one, is that the first marker typically to be diagnosed is there's evidence of an elevated androgens in testing. The second would be an irregular cycle. Now, remember what I talked about in the beginning. This, for some women with PCOS, it is that you never know when your period's coming. You could have a period, 32 days apart, and then not get another period for 50 days. And then, swing back and forth. That's very common for women with PCOS. So they don't have a natural rhythm happening in their body. And so when I recommend things like tracking, they're like, well, that's really hard because I don't know when it's arriving, I don't know what's going on. And so it's still important to note down even things like, do you have changes happening in your cervical mucus and other signs and symptoms in your body, even though you don't have an actual bleed that's happening, because we're trying to pick up and pinpoint on different variations that are happening throughout the month. The other thing is that starting to connect yourself, for those who look at things like seed cycling or lunar cycling, and you're frustrated because you're like, I don't have a regular cycle, that's where you can tap into the moon in order to incorporate that. And I have a whole seed cycling ebook, which we can send out with the recordings of this as well, so you can understand more about what I'm talking about. But there's also women who have their period every single month. So it gives the appearance like they are regular. They have a regular bleed, but they are not ovulating. And ovulation is actually the main event. Your period is the culmination. It's the final phase. But if we're not ovulating and releasing an egg, we are not creating the opportunity to produce progesterone. And so again, we have this androgen excess. We have too much testosterone, not enough healthy amount of estradiol from the ovaries. Our estrogen receptors become impacted, not enough progesterone. This is also where women who suffer from PCOS, there's a lot of mood symptoms that can come with this: anxiety, depression, sleep issues, because having a lack of progesterone, this is your calming hormone. This is what is supporting and calibrating your nervous system from being in that sympathetic fight or flight, very reactive, to being in that parasympathetic, very calming, very rest, digest, take things as they come, move through it. And without having that, that can have us feel very unhinged. And especially for women who they have these regular bleeds, but they're not ovulating. The second half of their cycle leading into that, they will feel awful. They will feel, PMS will be something that feels quite extreme for them. So again, this is important to pay attention to. Now, the third way of being diagnosed with PCOS would have been that you needed to have ultrasound evidence of there being cyst, or this ring of pearls around the rim of the ovary. And here's the issue with that. That is very outdated information. And if you look at some of the greatest teachers and researchers, Dr. Geraldine Pryor, Dr. Lara Briden, Dr. Aviva Romm, who are doing a lot of the work around PCOS research, is that PCOS, which stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome and is a very outdated name, actually has nothing to do with cysts on the ovaries, because these so-called cysts are actually follicles or eggs, which are normal for the ovary. So you can have many eggs, many follicles, and still have normal hormones. And so that's why nowadays ultrasound tests can't diagnose or be the number one rulant of whether or not a woman has PCOS. The other thing is that a lot of women are told that if they are not overweight, don't have excess facial hair, they don't have a lot of the quote unquote normal symptoms, they can't have PCOS. 80% of women who are diagnosed are struggling with some excess body weight, are struggling with hirsutism, which is excess body hair, not just on the face, but throughout, and acne. But 20% of women who are suffering from PCOS are actually thin or quite lean, don't have a lot of the external characteristics. And so those women, they often just get dropped into a different pile, which is like, we don't know what to actually do with you. You're going to go on the pill. That's oftentimes the solution. So more commonly than not, PCOS is in a situation for women where they have those higher androgens, they have unstable blood sugar, and that's really what's driving it. So you have anovulatory cycles. I'm just reading some of the comments here. Yeah. And so, this is the frustration, is that, it's like you've got to have 2 out of the 3 different things that I just said, but nothing is black or white. There can be so many different variances in how this shows up in your body and what your body is feeling and what's going on. And one of the bigger problems is that so many women don't actually understand. They're not cycle empowered. They're not cycle educated to really know what is normal or should be happening in their body. And the other side of this is that for a lot of these young girls, right? So if you at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you started off your period, you had this irregular period, you have all these signs and symptoms, your doctor told your mother or told you that you have PCOS, and then you get put onto the birth control pill right away. This actually exacerbates what's going on, because the pill is not a fix or a solution. The pill is a Band-Aid. And what's happening is now you have this chemical amount of synthetic hormones coming into the body. Your ovulation is completely shut down from that pill because of the way that it impacts the pituitary gland. Your sex hormone binding globulin levels for your hormones are going to be way off. And now when your body comes off that birth control pill, for so many women, and not every woman, for so many women, though, there are going to be even more problems, because her body in those puberty years, where puberty is like a time of hyperhormones, and it is not a year, it is not a couple of years. You don't get your period and now you're through puberty. It is over years and years and years, right? We actually go through 2 forms of puberty as women. We go through our puberty onset, which usually starts somewhere between the ages of 8 to 10 years old and is anywhere from about 8 to 10 years long, until our hormones finally get into this rhythm. Because it's not about what's happening in the ovaries. The ovaries are the end result. It is about what's happening higher upstream in the body. This all starts in our brain as women, which is why stress impacts us so much, which is why things like our lifestyle, our nutrition, our movement, our sleep, the people we spend time with, impacts things like our cycle and our hormonal function so much. And so we take young girls and I was 15 when I went on the pill, not because of PCOS, for other things, but that is a critical period of time of our body figuring out its way, of literally getting its feet underneath it. And we decrease this opportunity for deeper connection of what is going on in the system. When we get into perimenopause, it's the same thing, hyperhormones. The body is now unwinding what has been going on for those deep years of a lot of endocrine fertility function. And so it's so important for us to understand this, to keep the dialogue going and to keep the education going, and for our girls to understand this as well too. My goal with my daughter is to teach her as much as I can, but to also, prepare the foundation of her body so that if she were to ever make the conscious decision on her own to do something like go on the pill, her body is healthy enough, her lymph system, her drainage pathways, her elimination pathways, her gut is supported enough that it won't have as much of a detrimental factor or impact as the woman who is not given any suggestions from her primary care practitioner and just thrown on the pill as a Band-Aid. So it's just so important for us to stay connected to what is and what is not when it comes to our hormones. And this is not just a hormonal issue. PCOS, this is a conditioning that is happening between metabolic issues and hormone issues and the gut. There is no woman that is suffering from PCOS who is not suffering from managing her glucose and managing her insulin. She just may have never been taught that. She may have never been given the opportunity to track that properly, to use something like a continuous glucose monitor. She may not have been taught that all the digestive and gut issues that she's been dealing with have been so deeply impacted by the PCOS and vice versa. Again, it's like, what came first? Is it the bacterial environment in the gut? Her PCOS on top of yeast infections and UTIs and acne and dandruff and dry skin and rashes and all of these other things, they're not separate. They're not separate. They're very much interconnected. We're just taught, put them in a separate bucket, treat separately, look separately. And when you start to pull it together, this is a lot of the education. What we teach in the Hormone Project is for you to take this over here and this over here and bring it together inside your own body and start to do that inner work of getting the gut on page first, getting your elimination, getting your liver supported, all of those things that our body requires. Because you can get to day 4 with me where I'm going to talk about supplements, and you can go and buy all the supplements. And if you change nothing about your digestive health, nothing will change. You will just have spent a lot of money for a lot of things taking up real estate in your cupboard, and your body not being able to do what it needs to with those supplements because you've got to work on what's going on nutritionally and digestively. So I don't want you to come out of here feeling like it's one or the other. It's about slowly building this together and taking your time to get there. So what happens with these higher levels of these androgens? So if you're a woman who's been told you have high DHEA, you've been told you have high testosterone, and you have this high level of this 5-alpha reductase that's happening in your body, you have to understand that when we're looking at these high androgens, they're probably not the only issue that's going on. They're not the only hormone that we need to be focusing on and thinking about. And what happens for a lot of women is they're given something like spironolactone. They're given something like saw palmetto. They're given something like pygeum. They're given ECEG. They're just given the things to lower the androgens without looking at what's going on with the levels of estrogen or estradiol on your body. What's going on with how your body detoxifies this? What's going on in supporting your progesterone? What's going on with your cortisol, your stress hormone? So again, looking at that whole full picture, it's so important because with PCOS, the entire mechanism behind the scenes is off. We have too much testosterone that's accumulating and not enough that's being converted into estradiol. And so the brain is saying to the ovary, like, where's my estradiol? And the ovary is working hard to create more testosterone, which then the testosterone has to be converted by something called aromatase into our estrogen. Okay, so did you know that we need testosterone? Testosterone is one of the building blocks that is going to convert into our estrogen. Okay, So trying to just go in and dampen your level of testosterone is not the approach that we take to supporting PCOS. And so your ovaries she's just trying so dang hard. She's like, I got the message. Okay. Like I'm here and producing all the testosterone, but there is a missing link here. I got to overflow. My cup runneth over of all the testosterone. I can't convert it into the freaking estrogen that you're asking me for. And why is this happening? From these other mechanisms. The insulin, thyroid issue, nutrient deficiencies, gut bacteria, all those things going on, elevated stress. You know what we see happen in women with PCOS? And this is the difference of how you know if a woman has no period due to PCOS versus no period due to amenorrhea. The woman with PCOS is going to have elevated LH levels. Her luteinizing hormone is going to be high because the ovary is producing the testosterone, but the aromatization is not happening to convert it to the estrogen. The woman with amenorrhea is not going to have the elevated LH. Okay. And it's this vicious cycle. And what we see as women in our body, how it's showing up is not just the lack of period or the lack of ovulation. It's the weight starting to pile on. It's the acne that's getting worse time over time. It's the mood swings. It's the issues with our hair. And the difficult part as women as well, too, and younger women, is that now you add in things like environmental factors. You add in using feminine products, right? Period products that are laden with bleach and dioxins, using body care products and hair and makeup and plastics and all of that with all of these endocrine disruptors, is that they are messing up all of the estrogen receptor sites in our body's ability to keep things moving clean and clear. There's a level of toxicity that starts to build up in our system. And so this impacts things in our health, not just in our actual menstrual cycle. This impacts our body's ability to actually burn fat well. It impacts our cardiovascular health because we need the healthy estradiol for that. It impacts our blood pressure. It impacts our joints. How many of you that are suffering from PCOS also have a lot of inflammation in your body, a lot of joint pain, a lack of energy, lack of proper restful sleep? There's a whole symbiotic relationship that is supposed to be happening behind the scenes in our body. And so this is not just, PCOS is not a hormonal issue on its own. PCOS is a combination issue. PCOS, it is coming from the gut. This is where a lot of that autoimmune energy is coming from. It is a metabolic issue and it is a hormonal issue. But the hormones rarely are what happened first. The hormones are part of the issue. The hormones are the symptom that are getting our attention to go deeper behind the scenes. And this is why I wanted to break this up over 4 days of information so you could digest it. You could take this info in and be able to consume a little bit more as each day goes. So, the whole thing, yeah, I know some of you are asking with the pill and that you never knew that it shuts down ovulation. That is exactly what happens. And so, the saddest part of it is that for a young girl who does not have her period or a woman who desperately wants to have her period, the pill is an easy solution to give her that because you will bleed. But that's not a period. That's a chemical withdrawal bleed. And what that means is that when you don't take your pill for the 5 days or you take your sugar pill, that's when your period comes. Do you know why? Because you've stopped taking the chemical filled pill. How many of you have been on the pill and when you had an event coming up or you had something going on and you didn't want to be on your period, you just continued to take your pill longer? And your period didn't come, right? That's your chemical withdrawal bleed. It's not a period. And so women have been lied to, falsely given this hope that they have a regular period now, when what they've been given is a chemical withdrawal bleed every single month. They are not ovulating. Their hormones aren't any healthier. They've been given a Band-Aid solution so that they feel like they've moved something in the right direction and that this is healthier and better for their body. Now, a lot of women, they will come off the pill. They will, sometimes that's it. They come off the pill and all of a sudden now things regulate. The amount of women I know where they struggle to get pregnant, and then the moment they get pregnant, that PCOS reverses itself. The amount of women that I know whose PCOS goes into remission when they start to eat, when they start to balance their blood sugar, when they start to prioritize rest, when they decrease the high intensity and frequency of the exercise that they're doing. I need a sip, hold on. And you'll learn more about this as the days go on. But we are that demographic that is taught quick fix. Tell me now, like I want it yesterday. Boom, 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 boom. Not realizing that this is a much bigger issue and that the patience and the time that you can show up with now is going to help you so much moving forward. And this is going to help those of you who have daughters, who are going to have daughters, understand some of the signs and symptoms to look for in their body. And trust me, it's freaking hard. It's really hard to get your teen to understand, to stabilize their blood sugar all the time, to not eat the sugary things, what they need to pay attention to and all of that. But you need to keep talking. They need to keep hearing it so that we can protect them. Okay. And I want you to understand too, because one of you are asking, what this means upstream. You have something called an HPA axis. And when people hear or say things like, my adrenals are out of whack or my stress is through the roof, what is actually happening is there's an imbalance between your hypothalamus and your pituitary in the brain, and its direct connection to your adrenals, which then communicate with your ovaries. You're hardwired for survival and to be protected. So if there's massive stress going on, if you don't eat enough, if you are overworked, if you are burned out, if you are not well nourished, insert this, that, and the other. Your brain has the executive opportunity to create the executive decision to not do things like ovulate this month because it is not a safe enough environment for you to be doing what you need to do, let alone procreate. Your brain, if it does not feel convinced otherwise that this is the most balanced and safe opportunity, space, and time in order for that reproductive function to happen, can overrule. And so it does go much higher than that. Our thyroid is impacted in this as well too, and the gut, as I had said. So, it's interesting when I do a lot of the research around these things, specifically looking at the impact of our babies and of our children. That there are, literally babies that are being born who they already have this preemptively in their system because of what mom has in her system. And think about it. I know so many of you have seen this graphic where you see the image of the woman pregnant and you see the baby inside of her and you see another inside of that child. We are generations old in terms of us as an egg and our egg wisdom and our egg information that is coming with us from our mother, our grandmother, and our great grandmother's body. And we have been taking that in, and it gets more concentrated for every egg that is sitting inside of that vessel. So the eggs that we are carrying that are to become our children and our children's children are getting concentrated by what is around us in our environment, by what we bring and put into our body, by the stress that we allow ourselves to feel, by the exercise that we are exerting on our adrenals, all of those different things. And it can feel like a hell of a lot of responsibility. Yes, it can. Or it can feel like a hell of a lot of potential and power to be able to move in a different direction. Okay, because that is what education is. Don't allow the knowledge to just sit inside of you and not change anything about what you're doing, or don't allow the new information and the knowledge to just hang out in you and create fear and then paralysis, and then you change nothing. Take it in, hear it, be like, holy cow, didn't hear that before, didn't know that. Wow, okay, now I'm going to shift and I'm going to do something a little differently. The beautiful thing in our body is that not only are things getting concentrated time over time, but here is the other thing. Within a matter of days, weeks, months, all your cells are regenerating. Your body's ability to heal and to regenerate and to change the story and to change the outcome is possible. It's right there. We just have to give different resources. We have to give different ingredients to our body. Do you know the journey of your ovaries in terms from their health? So anytime you as a woman change something that you're doing for your ovarian health, this change doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen in 2 weeks, doesn't happen in 28 days or 30 days. The ovarian journey is 90 to 100 days minimum. So what this means is that healthy new habit that you have started, you need to give it a minimum of 3 to 4 months in order for your ovary to fully receive that message, to take it in, and to change the outcome. That is an entire season. That's a whole season. And we give it a week. We give it a couple of days. We give it until our next period. We give it until the next symptom. Change will never happen there. You have to sink yourself into it for a season. And as you track and as you start to pay attention and you commit to why you're doing this, don't attach yourself to wanting to improve your ovarian health because of the number on the scale. Attach yourself to your ovarian health because this is the health we need for the rest of our life. The rest of our life, not just about right now. And that is, I get asked the question all the time, well, like, how long am I going to have to do the things to take care of my health, Jen? Well, how long do you want to live? How long do you want to live? How long do you want to feel healthy for? What is it worth to you? This is why we show up every day and take care of ourselves. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be hard moments. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have, another month of not ovulating, another couple of months, that you're not going to have the acne sometimes still, that you're not going to get sick, that you're not going to have the unstable blood sugar. But instead of laying back on the ground and feeling like there's no solution and no help for you, you witness it, you recognize it, you get curious about it, and you go, okay, I'm going to create a little shift. I'm going to get back on. I suffered from horrible acne for 8 years after my second child. I've shared about this a lot. 8 freaking years. And there was a lot of days that I just wanted to lie down and give up. And I stayed on track. I used the tools I had, and then I seeked out new ones. I spent a lot of time really immersing myself with Chinese medicine. Acupuncture helped me so much. Supporting my liver in a different way helped me so much. Supporting my kidneys. This is really where I also started to do a lot more research around GI function and started to offer a GI map testing. I started offering it because I was testing it on myself first. I was doing that with the Dutch test as well. And it opened up this entire different new world for me to understand what we cannot see in simple blood work alone, what we cannot see in the basic blood work that is being done, what we cannot see in simply just sharing our stories, but not going beyond what's happening on the surface. And I said to you, I wanted to show you what was happening in a test. And I'm going to share my screen here for a moment so that I can show you what I was talking about. Can you see this? I'm going to sip again. Okay, thank you. All right, so let me just move this little guy up here. So what you're looking at here is one of the pages of the dried urinary test for comprehensive hormones. This is called a Dutch test. So I run the Dutch test with all clients. We run it with all women that come into the Hormone Project. And I have such respect for this test because of what it can help us to understand and what it can help you to understand. So these are called your androgens, okay? These are androgenic hormones up here on the left-hand side. And DHEA, this is produced within the adrenals. For the age of this woman, the test that we ran here, I would want to see this sitting in around 300. It's at 32. So already we know that her adrenal health is actually not doing all that well. So that's indication for me, number one, adrenal health isn't doing well. If her adrenal health is not doing all of that well, and I also know this through conversation having had with her about her level of stress, how she's managing it. She's waking up in the middle of the night. Her blood sugar is all over the map. She has lots of cravings. She doesn't quite feel satiated and satisfied. This is a big red flag. Then we look down at her testosterone. If we look just at her testosterone alone at 9.67, and you look between these two yellow stars, you would say like, oh, it's actually like, it's good. It's right. It's within range. Okay. How many of you have ever been told like, you're fine, you're within range, nothing to see here, but you're like, I don't feel fine. I feel like something else is going on. So this is where now the picture blows up. Okay. So there's different areas here that I want to bring your attention to. So here's her testosterone. and this level here. We've also measured it in her blood work as well. When we look over here to the left, we can see this is showing us how her body is metabolizing or breaking down her hormones. And we have something called a 5B preference or a 5A preference, a 5-alpha reductase preference, which is more androgenic. And this woman here is moving almost all of her metabolites down more of a 5-alpha pathway, which means her body is converting it into that DHT, which is increasing her testosterone potency by more than 3 times what it is that we see here. 3 times more than what her body has the ability to manage or manage well. Now, the other thing I told you is that our body takes our testosterone and through this process called aromatase, which you can see with these gray arrows here, and converts it into our estrogen. This E1, this estrone, is mainly within the adipose tissue and the fat cells, and hers is definitely sitting at the higher end. Her estradiol is also sitting at the higher end. Look up above here at her progesterone metabolites. This woman is not in the perimenopausal age range, but this woman's levels are almost in the menopausal ranges when we're looking at her progesterone. So she has a regular period every month. She did not ovulate here. And what we want to do is deeper work to understand, is she ovulating ever? And so this gives us a lot of indication as how to be supporting. And there's many other pages of this test, but in working with this woman, we can't do something like go in and just give her the testosterone lowering medication or the testosterone lowering supplements and herbs. We have to take a look at how are we supporting what in this way would appear to be higher androgens and higher estrogen and no progesterone to help to support. And honestly, in this case here, to balance out what is going on with these 2 other hormones that are ruling the roost and the reason why she is showing up with the symptoms that she is. And so it's important to understand your results. It's important to understand that we have to look beyond just the way that we describe how we're feeling, ultrasound alone, basic blood work, and that you need to be able to ask these questions. Is the Dutch test something a traditional practitioner would do for them? No, and they won't even know what it is. They're not trained in it. And this is the problem, is that not only is your regular doctor not trained in something like a Dutch test, which is a functional test, they're also not trained in PCOS, which was why you'll either be referred out to an OBGYN or to an endocrinologist. Now, the tricky part about that too is that the way that our healthcare system in North America is set up is that unless it leads to a prescription, they don't know how to help you. They don't understand how to educate you on it. They don't understand how to explain to you the lifestyle things that you have to change. If it's not the birth control pill they're going to recommend for you to take, or it's not an IUD they're going to recommend that you try, they really are at a loss for giving you any other type of recommendations. Maybe you'll get metformin. Maybe you will get spirolactin. Maybe you're going to get a medication, but you are not going to get education. So you have to go through a holistic practitioner. And here's the thing as well. Your PCOS is not going to be taken care of for you with free healthcare. You're going to have to pay out of pocket for tests. You're going to have to circumvent the system, and you're going to have to ask yourself, how much longer am I willing to feel like this and to struggle? I want to share a little story with you before we go today. The amount of women that we work with in the Hormone Project that are struggling with fertility issues is a lot. And we have a lot of women that have gotten pregnant in the Hormone Project, and we have some women who have not. And we have women who come in with their stories and with all of their labs and everything that fertility clinics have run. And I'm going to tell you, I have yet in all of my years in clinical practice to work with a woman where the fertility clinic has run a Dutch, has run a complete full thyroid panel looking at her antibodies, has done any due diligence looking at what's going on with her gut, bacteria, viruses, overgrowth of different things, H. pylori, any of that. It is beyond, and has no problem charging these women tens and tens of thousands of dollars. I have women who've come in who are working with fertility clinics who are not even tested on the right day. If you are trying to understand what's going on with your hormones, you have to understand your testing dates. If you are trying to understand what's going on with your follicular stimulating hormone, you need to be testing that on around day 3, the beginning of your cycle. If you are trying to test for your progesterone serum, you need to understand, did you ovulate? So if you have a regular cycle and you have those signs of ovulation happening, then you're going to be testing 5 to 7 days post ovulation or 5 to 7 days before ovulation. So going and getting your blood work done on day 19 to 22 is only good if you're a woman who has like a 27 to 29 day cycle. Any shorter or any longer, that date has to be moved in accordance with when you've ovulated. If you don't know if you ovulate, very inexpensively, you can go to the pharmacy and you can buy what are called OPK strips, ovulatory predictor kit strips. There's also ones that you can urinate on. They're typically in the family planning section to start to learn more. Pay attention to your cervical mucus, the discharge that it is that you have. Really start to pay attention to your signs, your symptoms, to levels in your body. And Meg, you're saying like you can barely get your doctor to check vitamins in your blood test. They also don't understand that either. I'm trying to explain this to you in a way where, again, we have been so miseducated on so many things and in so many ways. And as a woman, if your true commitment to your health is with your hormones, you are not going to find the answers you're looking for working with your family doctor. I'm sorry, you're just not. You're wasting a lot of time, a lot of energy. Okay. And if you don't get your period at all, and you're asking this, Mira, because you don't know if you ovulate, then definitely that's when you want to use an ovulatory kit. And you would start, like, say you bought the kit today, you would start today, and I would have you pee on those strips for the next 21 to 25 days. If you do not get a positive at all, you can assume that you are not ovulating. If you do get a positive, you would get your test done 5 to 7 days post. So we're going to talk more tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to come back and I'm going to talk to you about the 4 different types of PCOS, because there is not one type of PCOS. There are 4 different types of PCOS. I'm going to break down each of those and we're going to go a little bit deeper. So I hope that was a good intro today. I hope I explained that in a way that it makes sense. This is a big topic, ladies. It's a big topic. I'm going to be converting this into a series on the podcast as well. I'm also going to be cushioning it up with other experts around PCOS, because there's not enough education and information that is out there in comparison to the amount of women who are actually suffering and going through this. So I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. If you do have any direct questions, feel free to email them out to hello@jenpike.com. You can also at any time book with one of our wellness advisors to just have a conversation. We do not charge you for it at all. And just share, this is my experience, this is what's been going on. And we're very honest with you as to whether or not we feel like we are a team that can support you. And if not, we will refer you out 100%. So don't ever hesitate to reach out. Okay, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you back here tomorrow, same time.